Keir Starmer. He gave a speech today, a lot of it focusing on the north. Let's have a listen to a little bit.
A choice between a Conservative Party with no plan for the future, hurtling down the only high-speed project it's ever managed to build, the highway to British decline, or the Labour alternative, a party that understands the potential that lies in regions like this, that has a plan to grow every corner of this country, will work with you to get the North East building again, get our future back with a decade of national renewal.
Fascinating stuff. None of it washes with me, though, because I honestly think if anyone actually cared about levelling up, cared about the North or whatever, you never would have had this situation where there was such a disparity between the two, because that has not just happened overnight. That has been decades in the making, I can tell you. What do you make to it, then? Keir Starmer, is he the man to sort out the North?
Well, it sounds good, and you give him credit for the fact that he's focusing on it, and he should. But the big thing missing in it is where he said he had a plan. Labour had a plan for doing this. There is no plan for doing this. There's just the speech and a few slogans, and there's no money to put behind it, and there's nothing you can say what he's actually going to do. And so, if this was easy, this government would have done it. Another government would have done it. This is going to be really, really difficult. Partly, as you say, because there's an inherited history to it. Partly because nobody really knows how to get this sort of thing going. And it will almost certainly cost a lot of money, and a lot of money will be wasted because it'll end up supporting, businesses that aren't sustainable, that go bankrupt further down the road. Because that's what usually happens when governments back businesses too much, excessively. So we really need to know if he's got a plan. Until he's got a plan, I don't really believe this cuts anything at all.
Do you?
No, I don't think any of the parties really understand the levelling up agenda. I think that the Tories kind of think that all we need to do is move one of the departments from Whitehall to Darlington or something like that, and that's what levelling up is. I don't think either of the main parties really know how to go about levelling up. I think the speech today was OK, but I agree with Daniel, it wasn't underpinned by any sort of real plan. A plan that, for example, understands that most of the wealth in this country is kind of sucked in by London and the South East, and the rest of the country is in many respects neglected. And I agree with you that actually is a process that hasn't just happened recently. I think if you look at the decimation of our industrial base, deindustrialisation, and the collapse of our manufacturing economy, and the way in which we now elevate financial services over the real economy where people work and where wealth is created, I think that has been hugely destructive for our country. And considering that, places like the North and the Midlands were hotbeds of industry and relied on, the manufacturing sector and the industrial base, during that process of deindustrialisation, when all of these jobs have kind of gone abroad or just disappeared altogether, these places have been kind of searching around for a purpose, really. You go to some of these places and there's some of the old pit communities, and you'll know in the North, some of them are still industrial wastelands to this day, and we've paid a huge price for that.
I find this interesting because Thatcher often gets a lot of blame.
And rightly so.
Yeah, but you say rightly so.
No,
because
it's rightly so.
Yeah, but I was looking today. So, for example, Wilson closed way more mines, pits, than what Thatcher did. Almost double there or thereabouts.
But it's not just about the pits, though, Michelle.
But that's a key thing, though, isn't it?
But it's about the whole approach to industry, the whole approach to the real economy. You look at the Big Bang, for example, in the city, massive deregulation in the city helped to pull more wealth into the city of London and again further neglect the industrial heartland.
Do you think the Tories get too much of the blame for this north-south divide?
Oh, I think Tories get too much of the blame for everything because it suits everyone to beat them up, and it's easy shots. But I don't think that's really the question. I think, first of all, Paul needs to remember, when you look at how much money the government spends in a particular part of the country, you also need to look at how much tax those parts of the country contribute as well. You need to look both sides of it. It's not true that London sucks in most of the money in the country. What is actually true is that London, through its the taxes it pays for most of the investment in the rest of the country. And so the fact that it might get a bit more in, but it's paying a lot more out than it's coming in. The second thing is, The city, the City of London. We haven't been promoting the City of London. We've been clamping down on the City of London since 2008. And we haven't been promoting the financial sector. Maybe we were when he's talking back in Thatcher in the 80s and the 90s. But we absolutely do not. We are to some extent reliant on financial services. We are, to some extent, reliant on financial services because we're good at them. We're also reliant on the services that are allied to them. We're good at legal services. We're good at accountancy services and things like that. Should we be closing those things down because you're somehow over-reliant on them? So we have an economy which is shaped in a certain way. In Germany, they have an economy shaped more around manufacturing, although that's a real trouble to them. That's turning out to be a real risk and exposure now when the cheap energy is running out. We've got it shaped in a different way. No two countries are the same. So we should be celebrating what we do and actually making it work. And all we get is, what happened back in the 1980s and what the pit villages were like.
Yeah, but
what's this discussion about?
Hold on a second. I mean, if we're talking about the reasons why we're in the position that we're in industrially, economically, then you can't ignore historical factors like that. You can't ignore the fact that the attack on the mining industry was a huge part of the programme of deindustrialisation.
The mining industry wound itself up through crazed strikes carried out by Scargill on a revolutionary basis.
That's a caricature.
Absolutely,
Daniel.
Absolutely
That's
true.
a caricature. What Thatcher did is threw thousands and thousands of men, because they were all men at the time, onto the scrap heap. You had villages and communities that were built around the pit. It was their main source of employment, their main source of industry. And the social decay that set in some of those communities. By the way, it was fundamentally unconservative.
The villages built around the pit.
If you look at the importance of family and order within society and relationships and people's well-being and the sense of community,
if you could reverse that, you would not. Nobody would say we should open up pits. Nobody would say that people should go down working in the bottom of pits
sure, given the lack of energy security
and nobody in the Green lobby would allow you to do it. So you're talking about a dream, it's history, and it's totally irrelevant. We are not going back to a pit-based economy.
I'm talking about historically whether it was a wise
So why don't we talk about what might happen?
Well, there you go. Look, I'll tell you historically, I'll give you some figures. Wilson closed 235 pits apparently versus Thatcher, who closed 115. We talk about levelling up. I always wonder, what do we mean? What is it we want to level up? Be careful what you wish for. I still have not got over the fact that on Wednesday I paid almost £18 for a glass of wine in London, and it wasn't even a large glass of wine. It was a 175. So I always think when I go up north, everything is a lot cheaper, including, not least as well, house prices. So sometimes we have got to be a bit careful